Hi, welcome to my channel, Learning with Boys. Today I want to talk to you, especially if you're a new homeschooler, but even if you've been homeschooling for a while, and just some do's and don'ts. Hi, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Rachel. I am a homeschool mom to 4 boys, ages 10 to 19. Been homeschooling 14 years now, and I just want to share some thoughts if you're getting ready to start homeschooling, if you've been homeschooling for a couple of years, just as reminders, some do's and don'ts that I hope will encourage you. And let me say, when I'm talking about these, I've done a lot of the don'ts. It's just taking some years of learning what these were. These aren't something I just knew and followed the rules. It takes some focus. So I want to share that with you. Also, I do have some videos that are more specific about how to choose homeschool curriculum. I have one on interest-led learning, and I have one on living books and read-alouds. So I'll post some of those below if you just need some ideas. But today I just want to give you some more of an encouragement that you can do this, and just some thoughts that might help you through this journey. So my first do is pretty simple, and it's just to do the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Especially if you are starting out and your children are younger and you just are a little hesitant. I wish I would have realized that later on, that if I could just focus on those and get those solid, that history and science could follow, or they could just be some simple books that we read together as a family. It didn't even have to be a curriculum. Make sure that you're focusing on their reading, writing, and just their math concepts. The don't would be don't stress yourself, because trust me, that will be easy to do once you start making this final decision that I'm going to be homeschooling. And it could be a little overwhelming, but don't stress so much that it's stressing your children. That's why I'm just encouraging you, if you just focus on the reading and the writing and the arithmetic and make sure that they have those basics, that we could add on in all those fun things a little bit later. With that, I want to say, do go slow and steady. These are sort of bouncing off of each other, my do's and don'ts. So keep that in mind. Do go slow and steady. What I mean by that is, if your child doesn't have the concept yet, it's okay. Just keep working on it until they do. It may take a week, it may take a month. Maybe they're struggling in math, maybe they're struggling in their reading. And I had one that was really struggled and was a late reader. But slow and steady, being consistent, being steady, being consistent, not stressing the child, not stressing yourself over that, but seeing a little bit of progress each and every, maybe not even day, because there were days you don't see the progress, but if you will see it, if you are slow and steady and continue just to be patient and work with them. Don't sprint. It's not a race to see who can be the winner at the end. You do not have to keep up with the system. You do not have to keep up with the Joneses. This is where stress can start. Really to build is when you start looking around at others and comparing. And also, you could destroy their desire to learn, which is what your goal is you want to give them a desire to learn, a joy for learning. Okay, so we're going to do the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And when we can, you're going to add in the other subjects, even if it's the next year. Then you're not going to stress yourself. You're going to take your time. You're going to keep your focus on that and not what everybody else is doing. You're going to stay slow and steady. You're going to be consistent so your child can learn. He's going to see that you want to help him or her. And it's not a race to see whose child is at the highest level, because every child will be different. Let me just encourage you with that. And God has a plan for each child, and it's going to be different. They're going to be at different levels. They're going to know more about one thing, and this child over here is going to know more about another. It's okay. Okay. Another do. Educate yourself. How do I educate myself? Well, let me tell you one thing. That is sort of where my channel name come from, Learning with Boys. Yeah, I had a lot of learning to do in the beginning, and I had to educate myself. I had to get some homeschool books. I had to read. I had to chew on what was necessary and spit out the rest. I think books, with any book, unless it's the Bible, it's not going to be just for you. Now, I can gather information from tons of books. I just want to encourage you on that, because sometimes we feel like we found the perfect book. I'm going to follow this to the T. Sometimes that's not going to work for your family. It might have worked for their family, but you might have to tweak it a little bit. You might have to make some changes. So that is sort of why I'm mentioning that. That's just something I have learned over the years, that there's some really good things in those books, but this is what I need to do. And that's okay. You'll see that as you progress and you're educating yourself, and as you homeschool them, you'll see their needs, you'll see your needs. So, but as I mentioned, with your kids being slow and steady, that's even with yourself. Like I said, it'll take time, slow and steady. Continue to educate yourself. I remember one of the curriculums, my son was going into 3rd grade. We started homeschooling my oldest when he was in 1st. And it was, I decided to branch off from Rebecca. And it was the grammar. But the curriculum that I picked, which was a suggestion from another homeschool families, was so helpful to me. It actually, I felt like it helped me learn how, not just the grammar, but how to teach it to him and how to teach it to my next child. So I have been able to carry that through, even if I didn't use that curriculum. Now, so I just wanted to share that thought with you. If you can find a curriculum that will also educate yourself, if that is an area that you're a little bit weak in. Now, for math, I'm more probably of a math person, so that wasn't quite the extent I needed. I could explain math problems to my child, and I understood grammar, but teaching it, explaining it was another story. So that's sort of what I mean by educating yourself in that area. Another way also to educate yourself is when my kids would ask me questions about something. I'm talking about elementary, even early elementary, not high school, because it's going to be totally different when you have a high schooler asking you questions, because usually you're probably not going to find the answer in a book at the library. But when my kids were younger, they would ask me a question, and if I did not know the answer or wanted to give a more in-depth answer, I would say, we'll get a book at the library about it. And then I would have some things written down, some questions they may have asked, it could have been about a bug, it could have been about a plant, it could have been about the weather, it could have been about some type of vehicle we've seen on the road. We would go to the library and look for that information. We'd get a couple books, and that's where we started. And I wanted them to see that they could find the answers themselves if they searched. So not only was I trying to educate myself, I was trying to teach them how to educate themselves. So once they have that beginning reading, writing, and math done, then they can begin to see that. It'll all come together. Once they get older, you'll see how that will be a blessing. So once they're in high school, yes, they can Google it. But I want my children to learn how to research, how to find the answers, how to look for themselves. So now every little question, I didn't say, we'll have to wait and look that up. No, I didn't do that everything. A lot of the times it was something I really didn't know the whole answer to. So I said, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to remember to write that down and get a book at the library. So that was always helpful. So we do want to educate ourselves, but we don't want to feel like we have to do it all. Okay, there's a lot of info about homeschooling out there. There are videos. There is homeschool curriculum to pick. There are online programs that you can choose. There are so many different directions you could go. How are you going to narrow it down? How are you going to decide on what you're going to do? You cannot do it all. Now, this is where we have to be careful about comparing. We are supposed to be taking it slow and steady, and if we start comparing, we're going to feel ourselves starting to sprint. Like, wait a minute, I got to catch up with so-and-so. Wait a minute, they're doing this, I've got to do that. And we'll fall into that trap again. It can happen so easily that you don't even realize it. So just want to forewarn you, and it will probably happen, but it's okay. Just say, no, I've got to stop. I've got to focus on this with my child. This is what is important. I need to make sure he's reading. I need to make sure he understands his math. And reading to your child before they can read, I suggest so highly, because even with history and science, they can learn so much just by you reading a book to them. So I encourage that. God has created each of us different. He's created each of our children different. He's created each family for a purpose, and each of our children for a purpose and plan. And they're not all going to be the same direction. So yes, some children are going to be more apt to do really well in one area, and one area just mediocre. And another child can take off with that. So God has given each of us the responsibility, and God has created each of us different. And we need to stay focused on what His purpose is for us and our family, and what He wants us to do with our children. And it may look different than even your best friend who homeschools. It may look totally different. That's why it's so important to, one more do pray. Pray and ask the Lord for guidance and direction. Read your Bible. Seek His counsel. Let the Holy Spirit guide you. There's so many times that I didn't know after doing so much of the research and so much of this, and sometimes almost falling into, well, maybe I should just do this because that would help my child because everybody else is doing that. That He's pulled me back to keep me focused on what was best for my family. And that takes time, and it does take prayer. And while you're doing that, don't look around at everybody else. Look to the Lord. And I just want to encourage you with these words, that if God has called you to homeschool, then He will guide you and direct you in the direction He wants for your family. So I appreciate you all watching this video. I hope it was encouraging. Remember, these are things that I have struggled with over the years, but I do know that the Lord is faithful. I pray that you all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching.